There is a common perception in the world that spirituality, meditation is something that's quite inactive, isolated from day to day life, often seated or even lying down in places of solitude, very minimal external stimuli. And these will definitely create a peaceful, simple experience, refreshing, even restorative. But is that really what spirituality and meditation are about? The point of them? True spirituality involves ideas such as personal responsibility, transformation, accumulation of inner resources, enlarging of the heart, deepening of the wisdom. It's a very active endeavor for day to day life, for enhanced quality of life. So, always checking myself, especially when I'm in seated reflection. Am I aligned with the point of spirituality? Aligned with the very active nature of spirituality, active nature of silence. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. I feel it's been a while. Thank you for your patience. So tonight's topic is active spirituality. And while I was listening to the commentary, I was thinking about functional. Just this word functional, I've heard it in terms of functional medicine, but I know Sister Judy has talked in the inner fitness sessions, which we used to have at the academy, about functional fitness. And why I enjoyed those sessions because of this parallel, using physicality in terms of concepts that souls perhaps understand more, to make that parallel. So I'm not sure what your thoughts were about active spirituality, but that came to mind. If you could share about functional fitness and what your feelings were. I remember you've shared on the spiritual topic. It's parallel in terms of that, in terms of active spirituality.
Om Shanti. We can, but first, just perhaps to give a sense of what was in my mind with this theme, that I was, with the lesson we had this morning, it really struck me how many of our beliefs, especially around the biggies, who I am, who God is, and what's going on, are extremely passive. So that I don't really need to do anything. So this is something, for example, there might be the belief that God is omnipresent, or God knows what's going on in my mind, or God will take care of it. And they're both very true and very not true, if you will. So, or so and so, if I do this, then that person or that situation will take care of it. So even our concept of blessings is very passive. Or luck is very passive, that I just sort of wait for it to happen, completely ignoring something as important as the law of karma. So we had a very lovely, lovely extract at the end this morning by one of the top students, known as Mama, perform elevated actions. This is the whole point. Learn how to perform elevated actions, because that's what's running the show. So these concepts, even when we sit in meditation, we can become very passive. So that's really what I was thinking about, to challenge maybe some beliefs that we might have, that conscious or unconscious, that are counterproductive to our objective. And definitely functionality comes into that. We can see that in fitness, that someone might do what they believe is an exercise that is strengthening their core. And it's not that the exercise is bad, it might help them to feel what it's like for their core to be activated. But eventually, I want an exercise where I am asked to integrate the activation of the core into activities that simulate day-to-day life. So, because what happens is once we go into the actions, it's as if it's not activated anymore. It goes back into passive. It's only activated when I'm doing that very artificial exercise, and then I go back into passive state. So the classic example is, being in a plank. We don't move through the world in a plank unless we're a salamander. So, this plank position, the moment we stand up, it's as if we haven't done anything. So how to, yes, integrate that spirituality and understand that it is at the end of the day for day-to-day life.
It is interesting you've chosen this topic. It was about a week ago, and it was during some quiet time. And it's just what popped in my mind, that I have to be so engaged inside. And this may not be a meaningful question for those who haven't taken Raja Yoga, and it wasn't meant to be a technical question either, but I was really thinking my mind and intellect needs to be so engaged And so, listening to the commentary again, I was reflecting on if you could share a bit more about the role of the mind and the intellect and why they both have to be so important, especially when you're talking about being passive. Because while you were sharing about so much of the perception of spirituality being passive, I was thinking about just even goals that we have in life. We certainly don't, I mean, of course, there's some who do, but we also have an understanding that you got to do something, right? I know those are very physical examples, but I was again thinking about the role of the mind and intellect. Basically, the internal resources are required for spirituality.
So if I have something with mechanical parts like a car or a washing machine, and the parts are not functioning well, then they have to actually be very busy, work harder to produce less results. So within me, the soul, I have these capacities. One is the mind, which is the capacity to create thoughts. And the other is the intellect, which is the capacity to discern, recognize, remember, decision make, etc. So they're really important capacities that we have. And there's a third capacity that interacts with these two. What happens is, and I mean, yeah, they're kind of active, they're very busy because they're very inefficient. So we find people are overthinking, or we find the intellect is so easily wandering in so many different directions. They're just not working very well. So it's very hard for them to, it's not hard for them to engage at all, actually. This is the big problem in meditation. The mind can be very engaged in things. It can think a lot about something that happened yesterday, right? Again, because it's not very efficient anymore. Or the intellect can remember something, or, keep gnawing away at a decision. So they can engage. The issue we run into is they can't engage on spirituality. They can't engage on subtlety. And so it doesn't seem as meaningful. And so it feels like it becomes passive or bored or tired or disinterested or, numb when I'm trying to engage on spirituality, on eternal aspects. And so it starts to wander off. They just don't work very well. So they're not operating at their best. When they operate at their best, they very naturally orient towards the subtle, the spiritual, very naturally. So, yeah, I have to acknowledge that my mind and intellect have gotten a little rusty again because of thinking I'm the body. And so it's going to take a little bit of patience. I personally feel it's something I like to do. Training. I'm going to have to be a little systematic about this all and train.
When you were sharing about one of the top students this morning was sharing about just elevated action, could you share more about that? Because what does uplifting mean, especially in terms of spirituality?
So, Mama was a student. She had an incredibly deep grasp of what we call the philosophy or law of karma. And everything depends on the actions I perform. This is the essence of active spirituality. Every thought, attitude, the subtle and the gross, they all are creating an impact. So when we are in our intrinsically good, innate state as a spiritual being, our actions are naturally pure. So they're able to sustain, create and sustain a pure, or if we could say, happy world. What happens as we go along is that there's a bit of a disconnect in acknowledging this idea of action and consequence. So I want to be happy. I want to be peaceful. And we start to look outside for happiness. Again, we become passive in that endeavor. If someone behaves the way I want, I'll be happy. That's a very passive approach to the pursuit of happiness. Or if that situation goes the way I want, I will be happy. So I'm really surrendering my happiness to these external forces, and I'm becoming very passive. So really encouraging us to kind of, it doesn't make any sense, of course, when we say it out loud, but encouraging us to realize I need to be active in creating my own peace and happiness. As I need to look at the quality of actions I'm performing. Am I performing actions that are pure? Will create that peaceful, happy life. So this is the essence of what I was feeling with active spirituality, is to not contract out or farm out my peace and happiness, in the hope that, people will do what I want, situations will go as I want, but I need to look at the actions I'm performing.
You had shared one time in a small group session, but I found it very valuable because it came up during the commentary as well, of this session that you and Sister Tanya, I don't remember if it was Peace Village, maybe you was here, but it was inviting participants to close their eyes and to experience what that is like, using that word meditation, and then having their eyes open. Could you share about that in terms of what the participants discovered with respect to, again, what active spirituality is?
We'll definitely invite you to try it, to contrast the two, compare the two. But I can only describe my experience. I know that, souls first were permitted to close their eyes as there was a little meditation commentary, a little reflection, and then we're asked to open our eyes and continue. And what souls shared is that they found it more peaceful to do this with their eyes closed. And yeah, it certainly is going to be peaceful. I'm blocking out a lot. What I discovered is, yeah, it might be more peaceful. It might feel easier to concentrate, but there was not any sense of mastery. And that idea of mastery is a very important part of active spirituality, or if you want, that functional piece, that I do not move through the world with my eyes closed. I don't perform actions with my eyes closed. And that's when I need spirituality the most. But beyond that, I remember when I was very young in this path, and I remember a senior sharing, the original ones will all talk about keeping eyes open. But they were sharing the concentration, which is a part of mastery. The concentration is better with your eyes open. Now, speaking of functional fitness, I've been in classes where souls have to perform standing balance, which is a classic functional move, a standing balance work, and their eyes are open. It's actually very difficult to balance with your eyes closed. I challenge you to try it on one leg. So their eyes are open. And I always find it fascinating. There's like this very beautiful atmosphere in the room. It's like it's a meditation space, but there's this incredible focus and concentration in their eyes, instant concentration to be able to execute the action properly. So it's something to experiment. But yes, that always stayed with me, that the concentration is better if the eyes are open. And someone who is quite concentrated, they have a look in their eyes that really suggests there's that mastery. It is my own mind and my own intellect. No one else can do this for me. I don't want anyone else to control my mind and intellect. So that means I need to develop the skill of being able to engage and focus it on what I want, when I want, for as long as I want.
Going back to Mama, when you were sharing about active spirituality, and again, I'm not sure then those who are listening if they've taken the Raja Yoga course, but this aspect of elevated action called law of karma. Could you share again about taking life into my own hands in terms of determining what my experiences are? You can share in terms of this elevated karma piece. And again, I don't want this to be technical, but in terms of, maybe I won't use the word mind and intellect in this aspect, but in terms of my awareness, in terms of just my thinking pattern, if you could share about that, because it is quite interesting when you have a chance to witness, and I can't, I can't assume what souls are feeling, but when I'm witnessing what their souls with their eyes closed, they look very different from those who have their eyes open. There is a feeling of passivity. And I notice if I'm tired, my eyes closed, yes, it's very easy for my mind to wander. I just don't feel like it has that kind of capacity for my concentration in terms of what you're talking about. I want to be able to determine what my experience is going to be like, especially when I'm walking and moving around.
So, this idea of elevated action, the soul actually consciously or unconsciously is pulled to perform activity that will bring it out of debt. So we're very passive. We can be very, very busy, but not only just passive, but almost sleepwalking through life. Even though we're running around doing a lot of stuff, we're not connected to some very important things that color the quality of our activity and the consequences we're creating for ourselves. So actions, we feel this pull to come out of that karmic debt, if you will, perform different actions, and actions which are performed from a place of fullness and contentment, where I'm not taking anymore, where they're not driven by desires. These are elevated actions. They're very serviceable actions. I am giving, I'm not taking anymore. And I'm not talking about physically giving anything. I'm talking about my personal worth, my personal value, my self-respect, the things that really fill us up are completely intact. So as I move through the world, I'm not taking through the physical senses. I'm not taking through words or gestures. I'm full. So I'm starting the flow of energy. I'm starting to give, which is improving my karmic account. So this connects to spirituality, allowing me to have a consciousness that builds that self-respect, a consciousness that enables me to connect to God, the source of all that I am seeking, so I can fill up and have that full state as I come into action. It's actually very, very important. So that's the elevated action piece. I think once we start, even as we think about it here, suddenly we're reflecting with our eyes open. It's a very natural thing. Suddenly, when I'm thinking about, okay, this is about the quality of actions I'm going to perform, the last thing that seems appropriate is to sit down and close my eyes. Like I really am engaged in thinking about this because this is talking about my life. So the intellect suddenly is engaged. It wants to understand. The mind wants to chew on this because we're talking about the quality of our own life. So it's a very interesting thing. It seems quite selfish, but I have to become selfless to perform those kinds of actions. The idea of closing the eyes, I've shared before that when I was at the spiritual headquarters in Madhuban, there's these different meditation spaces, and there's 4 classic spaces. And of those 4, there is one where there's what we call conducted meditation, where there are 2 souls sit at the front of the room, and they are helping to hold the space, keep our intellects online. They have to be very good at meditating themselves. I love that room. I feel it is a training facility for alert, engaged, masterful reflection yoga. I really love the energy of that room. When I'm in there, I always feel pulled to have the eyes open. But more than that, I don't know, there's the intellect can engage, the mind can engage on spirituality in that room. So it's a really powerful space. And it's just so important to understand what spirituality is for, why I would sit in meditation. How does that connect to my quality of life? What's the point there?
I must ask this question because I feel it would come up. We are an OT, but we started late. It's a sensitive topic, right? This aspect of the secrets, manifesting things with my mind, with my thoughts, is that not being active, right? And where does that fit in all of this in terms of active spirituality? Apparently, I'm not aware of this, but someone else has met this whole aspect of manifestation has emerged again in terms of interest in the public eye.
Yeah, I think definitely as it feels things are more and more out of control in the outer world, we're going to have a natural pull to try and bring it back into control. And what that usually means is back in alignment with what I want. And that is such a central part of what you brought up in manifestation. It's I'm trying to manifest what I want. The moment that desires are introduced, there's some very good desires to have, by the way, but desires which are actually going to keep me stuck, then I'm on the other end of the spectrum from elevated actions. So I really have to check what I'm trying to manifest. It's not bad to use the power of the mind and the intellect. None of that is bad. But what is my objective? Is it to transform myself, to manifest my own highest potential? That's great. But if I stay the same and I'm using the power of my mind to make things happen out there, we haven't changed the formula that my happiness depends on what's going on out there. Versus my happiness depends on my own stage. So what am I using? Where am I directing this activity? On my own transformation or trying to change things out there?
Well, I will not continue with further questions. Thank you for those joining with us. We'll have a little reflection.
I invite you to be seated in a very alert way. No tension, but very engaged. Eyes can be open. And even though the eyes and ears are open, my attention is fully inside. The feeling that, no, I'm not this body. That this physical body belongs to the outer world, more to the chair in which it sits than it does to me. I'm the active being inside the body, acting through the body. And every action I perform, it does not depend on what's going on outside. It depends on the state of myself. When I am peaceful, blissful, content, light, free, my actions are very gracious, naturally respectful and kind. But if I'm anxious, worried, irritated, upset, insecure, I perform very different actions, create a very different future for myself. I just need the key to creating that beautiful inner stage to act from. And that key is knowing who I really am. I am an eternal being, a soul intrinsically good, and who I truly belong to can connect to define myself relative to the most majestic being, the most elevated being, the Supreme Soul. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. Maybe I will actually ask Judy to introduce a very special program that's coming up, just because I think you'll get the information right.
Sure about that. But yes, it's really an incredible turn of events in the drama. So some of you may have heard of the Brahma Kumari sister Shivani. She's quite well known through social media, very wise, deep thinker, very pure heart. So we've been trying, well, haven't really been trying. We've been inviting, but understanding, timing. Anyways, things turned out that she's able to tour Canada. She'll be here in August, from I believe the 15th to the 26th, and Calgary is one of her stops. But there's going to be 7 cities with centers in Calgary, main cities that she'll visit in Canada. And our stop, Calgary, is Friday, August 22nd. So the most easy thing to do is visit our national website, one word, brahmakumaris.ca. Visit our website and all the details are there. And you can find out more if it's of interest.
And of course, we have our local sessions. We will have our next Learn About Meditation that is happening. It's not the last Saturday, it's the 18th, I believe, of April.
It's Easter.
Sorry, it's 19th. So again, that's 12:15 to 1:30. We will be having those dates available on the website quite soon. There is also a Raja Yoga session, a course that's coming up as well. They've moved to Fridays in case those were not aware. But we have our drop-in sessions online as well as on site. So please visit the calgary.brahmakumaris.ca website, and you'll find all those sessions on there. You'll also find that on the Eventbrite. And of course, if you get the emails, we do try to send a weekly email to remind souls of that. So thank you for joining with us. If you have questions, feel free to email us. Om Shanti.